What's up, everybody? Matt Kajeski here, back again with the Stokastic DFS channel. And today I'm talking college football DFS ahead of Wednesday, November the 9th. It's Maction. We've got a 3-game slate. Before we get started, make sure to hit that thumbs up button, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you know when this and all other content goes live. We're also brought to you today by Prize Picks. And if you've never heard of Prize Picks, they're a daily prop-based offering platform where you're creating lineups of player props. It's overs, it's unders, touchdowns, rushing yards, passing yards, everything you can think of statistically. And it's not just football. They do have college football. They have NFL. They also have NBA, NHL, and you can make lineups across sports. And if you click the link in the video description below, you're going to get a first match deposit bonus up to $100 and 1 free month of Stokastic Plus Platinum with your first deposit. So make sure to check out Prize Picks. All right, let's dive into the show. We'll bring you behind the glass for our player data usage tool. You guys know the drill as far as what's up at the top. It's pace, it's pass rate, offensive, defensive line, interactions, where defenses are allowing production, and then the Vegas data. So we'll kick things off with Northern Illinois taking on Western Michigan. 1 point spread in favor of Northern Illinois, 49.5 total here. I was a bit surprised to see this move Northern Illinois' direction. We have it under pretty good authority that Rocky Lombardi and Ethan Hampton are out for the year. It's kind of reading between the lines with the coach speak. A beat reporter basically asked the Northern Illinois coach if it's time to move on to Nevin Cremascoli and Justin Lynch, and he said, yeah, I think it's time to give those guys more opportunities, suggesting to me that Lombardi probably is not going to play here. Lombardi is clearly their best quarterback. It is not even close. But if he's saying things like that, I don't know if we see him or Hampton again this season. But ultimately, I'm trying to guess as to what the coach means when he says things that are vague. So if he plays, obviously that would be awesome for Northern Illinois. But this team is slow. They're run heavy. They're 98th in pace. They're passing 42% of the time. I don't think that drastically changes moving to freshman walk-on Nevin Cremascoli. Justin Lynch, if he plays, he's certainly more mobile, but he got hurt immediately in their last game. I think if Lynch plays, he probably sees most of the work, and he's their best runner. So he probably gives him the best chance to win. He's an outside chance of being viable in tournaments, but you honestly might see both guys. I have no idea. They were trying to redshirt Lynch this year, so who knows. But at running back, we did see a bit of a changing of the guard. It had been a 50-50 committee between Ontario Brown and Harrison Whaley. I didn't see an injury, so I don't think Ontario Brown got injured when he was outcarried 20-6 last week by Harrison Whaley. I think this is just Harrison Whaley outperforming him. So tentatively, this is the spot where Whaley has an awesome workload regardless of whether Brown is involved or not. He averages 95 yards per game and 19 touches. Decent pass catcher here. But if Ontario Brown is truly in the doghouse, Harrison Whaley has potential opportunity to be among the best backs in the slate. Ontario Brown, he would be a GPP bet on Northern Illinois returning to the rotation rather than focusing on their most recent game where he was outcarried 20-6. The pass game has predictably suffered without Rocky Lombardi. Like Nevin Cremascoli, walk-on freshman's probably not going to cut it for these guys. So Cole Tucker at his price, $7,100, is a guy I'm just willing to not play. I'll try to get the expensive backs rather than pay up for Cole Tucker. Volume's not good. Efficiency's not good with the new signal callers, only averaging 63.5 yards per game. A lot of that front-loaded to when Rocky was playing, so not great. Shamar Thornton saw his routes jump back up after kind of one game in the doghouse. He had 8 targets. Far more likely to play Thornton at 4,800. He had 8 targets last game. He averages about 38 yards per game on the season. Again, not great numbers for him, but you could at least convince me because of price. He's a little more intriguing that way. These were the only 2 guys that had route rates north of 80% among receivers. Tight end Tristan Twos, actually, he jumped up to 80% of the routes. 3,600. He saw 5 targets. They've got about 5 tight ends they've used at various times this year, whether it's Tristan Twos, George Gums, Liam Sorgan, Drew Cassins, Miles Joyner. And there's been a lot of volatility between these guys. For reference, we had Tristan 61% just one game ago in terms of routes. He jumped up to 80. If I'm playing any ancillary guy, it is probably him, but I don't feel great about it. And then lastly, we went back to a rotation at wide receiver 3. It had previously been Kasper Rutkiewicz, and his routes dropped from 72% to 33%, so I'm not too interested there. I'd rather either play twos or Shamar, but I don't see myself getting a lot of the Northern Illinois side of this game. It might be Justin Lynch here or there because of his mobility, assuming he warms up. Just watch that. And then Harrison Whaley as the bell cow back. For the Western Michigan side, this team is 71st in pace. They have a 47% pass rate, mostly on negative game script. They do not like passing, but they've lost a lot of games this year. They've also used 4 quarterbacks, and it looks like Trayson Bourget is going to get his 3rd start. He's actually been semi-competent for this team. I think he has decent GPP viability because Northern Illinois' defense is awful, especially against the pass where they allow 8.6 yards per attempt. So Bourget, kind of an unknown still. So, I mean, there's potential upside here. He has 54 rushing yards. The passing statistics for every one of these quarterbacks is very skewed just because of the repeated benchings, but Bourget actually showed some life in their most recent game. I think he's semi-viable in tournaments. As we'll talk to, there's not very many quarterbacks that are viable in tournaments today. Sean Tyler, this guy is a monster, and he has seen an increasing workload with Ladarius Jefferson away from the team. 6,700 for him on DraftKings. He's averaging 18 touches per game. He's exceeded that. He's clearly exceeded that in the last 3 games. If we look to that span, 21 touches, 24 touches, 26 touches. They're a slight underdog here, 1 point, but I don't think that matters too much. And then behind him, it's Zahir Abdus-Salam. He kind of has worked into that Ladarius Jefferson role, which ebbs and flows. At max, you'll see like 10 touches for him. Minimum, he had 2 carries last week. In competitive games, they're going to ride Sean Tyler. So that's where I want to go. Really, for this Western Michigan team, the rest are going to be GPP plays. Corey Crooms, 7,400 is very expensive on DraftKings. Again, you can tell I kind of prefer paying up for running backs, but he's in the same range as like Cole Tucker. His volume's way better than Cole Tucker, so I'd rather play Crooms just if you're picking one of the expensive receivers between these 2 teams. Crooms does average 10.2 targets per game, about 69 yards, so not efficient, but with Bourget being a little better, maybe there's a chance that the efficiency increases. It's basically been the same 3 receivers for Western Michigan the whole year. It's not too different. Crooms leads the pack here, but if you look to the ancillary guys, Anthony Sambucci, he hasn't seen fewer than 96% of their routes in 5 games. Jelani Galloway looks like the 3 route-wise. His routes, he's been up as high as 100 in their 3rd most recent game. Then he went to 97, and last week 70. No injury to my knowledge, but I think you get more consistent routes out of Sambucci for the price. If I'm going to pay for Galloway at 6K, I might as well just pay it for Crooms. Sambucci being the punt play here I want to get to. And then lastly, their tight end, Blake Bosma. He was not benched necessarily, but we've seen other tight ends get involved, like Josh Bourget played a little more. I'm probably not playing Bosma. I would rather play Sambucci. Buffalo, Central Michigan. This game has a 1.5 point spread in favor of Central Michigan. 54 total. We saw Buffalo implode last week against Ohio. This game has a little more attractive of a total here. At 54, Buffalo's 46th in pace. They have a 48.5% pass rate. Central Michigan's 26th in pace. They have a 53.5% pass rate. So a little bit more intriguing overall. On the Buffalo side, again, complete implosion last week. Cole Snyder, just not the most skillful quarterback. He does have volume. He's also not rushing as much as I thought he might. 124 cumulative yards this year is not ideal. Only 240 really in that range as a passer. To be exact, 238.5 per game on 35.5 attempts. So he's viable in tournaments, but he's expensive. I think I might honestly rather take a shot with like a Bourget than pay 7,500 for Snyder. The backfield's a 50-50 committee. Ron Cook, Mike Washington. We've seen them average 15.2 touches per game and 13.8. Cook leading that slightly. And then Al-Jay Henderson is their complete change of pace here. These guys can get phased out of games, which is a concern. Central Michigan also plays good run defense, 3.7 yards per carry allowed. Neither is our particularly involved pass catcher. We're talking target shares below 7%. So Ron Cook, Mike Washington are squarely in the GPP conversation, but there's a lot of really good backs on this slate. They are GPP plays for that reason. The receiving game, we really have 2 locked-in players here in Ken Williams and Justin Marshall. I think their prices should be flipped. I know Ken is the better target share on the year, but it's slight. It's 27% to 24% for Marshall. Marshall's come on strong lately. Marshall's outgained him 569 to 508. They even have the same amount of targets in the last 2 games. So Marshall, I think, is really intriguing here. He's the player I like. He's a transfer. But Ken Williams is solid as well. If you like, here's all I'll say this. DraftKings Marshall is the better price adjusted play. FanDuel, it's Williams. Their prices are flip-flopped. Jamar Gassett went down with an injury. We don't have an update on his status. So he's already the wide receiver 3. Not too much viability. I'd rather get up to one of the other 2 guys. But if you're getting in the weeds here, Gassett, just know he got injured. They replaced him mostly with Cole Harity, 62% of the routes for Harity. And then from there, they went to Maryland Johnson, 38%. If Gassett plays, he's 1, then Harity, then Johnson. If Gassett's out, it becomes Harity, then Johnson for the ancillary pass catchers. And then they rotate tight ends. Not interested in any tight ends here. Central Michigan, talk about rotation. They're rotating quarterbacks. Daniel Richardson's out there for passing downs. Jace Bauer for rushing downs. Bauer's played really well, so I think there's an outside chance that Bauer just gets all the snaps. Seems unlikely, though, because Richard's been efficient as a passer. He just doesn't have any mobility whatsoever, and he can't contain himself. So I think this remains a timeshare, which makes it difficult to trust. Again, Bauer would be the guy if you want to take a shot in tournaments. But we've got 6 teams. I'm not sure that's super live unless we get word or something that he's locked in. Don't think it'll happen. In the run game, Lou Nichols did return. People were unsure of his status. Well, he saw 28 carries. I think we can be pretty confident, as long as he didn't have a setback, that Lou Nichols is going to be locked in, and the guy, 2 targets as well. 30 touches in his return. Lou Nichols is a monster. He's not expensive enough. You just find a way to play Lou Nichols. And then in the receiving game, with the move, the slight move, we'll call it, to Jace Bauer, the passing volume is just plummeted. So Carlos Carrier at 6,400. He hasn't seen more than 4 targets in the last 2 games. He's double-digit targets once in that span. Once in the last 4, that's tough. Joel Wilson's out for the year at tight end, which is a real killer for this team. I think Jalen McGaugh, he and Finn Hogan continue to split as the wide receiver 2, but there hasn't even been consistency there. If we pull up routes here, Carlos Carrier, 69% last week. He's the one. And then McGaugh was at 38%. Finn Hogan was at 62%. You even had, Sam Hicks at 39%. Marcus Young at 31%. He's a tight end. It's a nasty rotation for the most part now. I think the only other player that might have some viability is Cade Conley. Cade Conley, their backup tight end, 60% of routes, 3 targets. He's the stone minimum, so he's an option down there. But otherwise, Finn Hogan maybe. Carlos Carrier is too expensive for my liking. McGaugh as well. Tough to get to Central Michigan, but the running back, Lou Nichols, is a stud. Kent State, Bowling Green, the best game for DFS based on the total, 55.5. Not too drastically different than even the Northern Illinois or Buffalo totals. But Kent State, they're the favorite here, 2.5 points over Bowling Green. Kent State plays at the speed of light. They're 10th in pace, 42% pass rate. Bowling Green, 89th in pace, 52.5% pass rate. Kent State has a brutal defense. We'll talk about their offense first here. Colin Schlee, he's returned. He's mobile. He has 381 yards. He's the best locked-in dual threat we have. I think Justin Lynch and Jace Bauer could rival him, but they don't have clear starting roles, whereas Schlee does. As a passer, 216 yards per game, 27.5 attempts. I think he's probably your number 1 cash game quarterback because of the mobility and locked-in starting, but you could pivot away from him. I don't think it's out of the question to play 4 running backs today too and not use a quarterback in the super flex. But I'd rank Schlee 1. In the backfield, they've condensed their opportunity to Marquez Cooper, 25 touches per game. He's averaging 111 rushing yards. Not the most active as a receiver. He has just a 4% target share. This team doesn't throw to running backs a lot, but it hasn't really mattered. He's been able to get there. Bowling Green doesn't have a great run defense, 4.5 yards per carry allowed. Kent State's going to run so many raw plays that Cooper has a massive workload here. He hasn't seen any fewer than 29 touches in 3 straight games. Love Cooper. Big injury news for Kent State. Their number 1 and number 2 receivers are hurt. Dante Cephas missed their last game. Devontae Walker went down in the first quarter. That allowed wide receiver 3, Jayshon Polk, to see 17 targets. Now, Polk had been injured previously this year, so his target numbers on the year aren't great. He actually has 23 total targets on the year. So yes, 17 of those 23 targets came in the last game. But again, injury related, nothing to worry about here. He'll be on the field really regardless of Cephas and Walker. So he's the safest play here. But Walker and Cephas, they have awesome roles in this offense if you can guarantee they're healthy. We just can't guarantee that now. So watch and see. That's your 3 receiver set if they miss time. So let's say 1 or 2 of them are out. Who could you maybe go to? Well, last week the routes were a bit tricky to evaluate. You had Trell Harris at 100% of the routes, and you had Marcus Harris at 75%. I do believe Trell would get the nod over Marcus for what it's worth, but I don't feel super confident in that. These guys are cheap, $3,500 for Trell. He had 7 targets. Marcus only had 2. He's the stone min. We'll just have to wait and see how viable these guys are. Tight end is a rotation. I don't have a ton of interest in tight end for this team, but that's how I would rank them for now. Chris Leach is the tight end for any of you that care. Bowling Green, Matt McDonald has a starting role for this team. It's not in question, so he does have some viability because of that, but it's been pretty bad for him. 37 rush yards on the year, 221 pass yards per game on 33.5 attempts isn't great for McDonald. He's also 8K, which was unbelievably high in my opinion. Like, I might rather take a shot on Bourget again. I think Bourget is maybe, I don't know what to call it. The upside with him at his price is maybe a little more enticing than taking like a floor of 13 points from Matt McDonald at 8K. It's also why I think playing 4 RBs is semi-viable. And then we get to the backfield, Jason Patterson. He's in kind of a timeshare with Teron Keith. Keith is the main pass catcher, but they actually had 10 carries apiece in their last game. Patterson averages 10.6 touches per game on the year. I think he's the best rusher this team has, but Keith, again, will be more involved as a pass catcher. They also use Jamal Johnson a little bit. Nick Mosley pops up here and there. So it's a 3 to 4-way timeshare at running back most weeks, which makes it harder to get to. In the receiving game, I think this is pretty cut and dry. Odiu Hilaire is their number 1 in terms of yardage and targets, 20% target share, 47 yards per game. He's kind of at a middling price range where I think he's fine. You know, his targets aren't all that different than, you know, like some of the Central Michigan players like Carlos Carrier at this point. It's not that different. So I kind of like paying down for him or someone else in the Bowling Green offense. When we look at their routes, I think this team is fairly easy to evaluate at this point this year. There's not really any injury concerns. You've got Hilaire playing the most. Tyrone Broden's second most. He has a 70% route rate in back-to-back weeks. From there, it's tight end Christian Sims. His route rate is 55%. And CJ Lewis is the wide receiver 3. He pops up at 67.5%. You also saw Harold Fannin play a little bit more last week. This team uses double tight end a fair amount. That's why, you know, like Christian Sims' route rate's only 54%, and Fannin popped up at 50%. Just for those of you playing really deep GPPs. But to rank them, I think it's pretty easy. Hilaire 1, Broden 2, Christian Sims 3 for me, CJ Lewis 4. But that'll do it for the slate today. If you guys have any questions, let me know in the comment section. Let me know what you think overall. I would love to hear it. And of course, you can reach out to me on Twitter. I'm at Matt_Kajeski. Always chopping it up pre-game before these games kick off. And hit the thumbs up button, subscribe on your way out. That helps us a ton. If you've already done that, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Otherwise, we'll be back tomorrow for Thursday. We'll be back Friday for the 3-game slate. And of course, the main slate on Saturday. So good luck, guys. We'll see you again next time.